Listen, please don't call off our wedding." I regretted that I might have been a little childish after seeing his expression. However, this man who might be my future father-in-law was looking down on me, and my boyfriend wasn't doing anything to help me. I was at the brink of my patience with my boyfriend and my soon-to-be father-in-law, who evaluated things based on brand status alone. My anger had reached its limit at the first marriage meeting. I was driven away, and in the second meeting, he scorned me as poor, looking at my coat. But as soon as they saw the tag on my coat, both of their expressions changed. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a ground staff at an airport. My parents live in Italy, and they run a fashion business. Despite that, I live alone in New York. That's when I met my current boyfriend, Jacob Turner, at my favorite cafe. He was 2 years older than me and a regular customer of that cafe, like myself. As we started to see each other more frequently, he began to treat me kindly. So I, who was never stimulated by anything on a daily basis, quickly fell in love with him. After 2 years of dating, I finally decided to marry him. "Hey, Jessica, how about we go to my parents' house for a marriage meeting next week?" One day, he suddenly proposed this. I was thrilled that he also considered marriage, just as I did. His father, like my own, ran a large fashion brand business, and I liked the fact that he was as globally active as my father. And true to being the son of a brand president, he too was decked out in branded clothing. "I'd love to go for the marriage meeting," I responded with a smile. But he looked a bit grim as he said, "But my dad, he dislikes people who seem poor. Are you sure it'll be okay? I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm not saying you're poor or anything, but it's just your appearance, I guess." He meant no harm, but something about his statement felt like he was looking down on me. "Are you saying there's something wrong with how I look?" "No, I think your uniqueness is great." How rude. I'm wearing something decent just so I could look worthy of being Jacob's girlfriend. That's right. Ever since I started dating Jacob, I began to take more care of my fashion. Even on my days off work, I never skip makeup, and I began to take regular interest in my outfits, ranging from budget-friendly brands to high-end labels. Jacob's presence had a lot to do with us just walking next to him, shining brightly as he does. I would look less by comparison. His best feature undoubtedly is his looks. With his model-like physique and face and the aura he exudes, he could easily grace the pages of a fashion magazine. When it comes to work, I earn a higher income and speak multiple languages. So in terms of capabilities, I am higher. However, he has facial features that far surpass those, and I was effortlessly drawn to him. But his occasional condescending remarks bothered me. "Well, Jessica, you're pretty, so I think you'll be fine. But be prepared because my dad is strict." "Strict in what way?" "Whether you're suitable for the Turner family, basically whether you fit the brand image of my dad's company." "So that means Dad is extremely proud of his brand, and I don't think he'll forgive anyone who tarnishes it. I won't be able to defend you on the day." As he said that, he smiled at me, but for me, it was nothing but pressure. And then what does he mean he won't help me? He seemed ready to abandon me without a second thought. With my feelings of unease mounting, the day of the marriage greeting came before I knew it. The house of what would be my future in-laws was a luxury high-rise apartment. "What floor do they live on?" "The top floor," he responded nonchalantly. But from my perspective, I was shocked enough to lose my footing. No surprise there. Upon researching, it was a super luxury apartment with a monthly rent of $7,000. The apartment was a 4-bedroom spacious living room and kitchen layout. It was just a 2-minute walk to the station, and although the rent was high, the convenience was also high. Anxious. I found myself mumbling, "I wonder if I'll be okay." Then he, with a slightly stiff face, said, "I don't know." It seemed that his father's approval was more important to him than his own girlfriend. I wonder if it's going to be okay. In a pinch, holding on to a sliver of unease, I got on the elevator with him. When we arrived at his place, his mother was there to greet us. Seeing her, I could tell from the way she carried herself and the expensive items she wore that the Turners were a special family. My parents also run a business, so I knew right away that everything she was wearing was high-end. Welcome, her tone quite cold. It was as if she wasn't interested in me at all. I was led to the living room where his father was already seated and waiting. "Jacob, is this the woman you want to marry?" "Yes, her name is Jessica. She's 2 years younger than me and works as a ground crew member at the airport." After he finished introducing me, I gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Just as I was about to introduce myself, father-in-law asked a question that caused me to frown. "Jessica, how much did your entire outfit cost?" The coat is from the Gap and the skirt is from Zara, so in total it's probably around 300 or so." Upon hearing my response, father-in-law sighed heavily and began to berate Jacob. "Jacob, you brought this cheap-looking woman here. Are you trying to disgrace our family name?" I'm sorry, Dad." I was shocked. Not only had father-in-law just insulted me by calling me cheap, but Jacob, rather than defending me, was desperately apologizing. It was then that I realized I couldn't marry him. "That's enough. We're done here. You know, I'm the CEO of a luxury brand. I can't tolerate a woman with such cheap taste," father-in-law declared, dismissing me entirely, and Jacob just stood there looking dumbfounded. Our engagement was off, and we started our way back home, walking side by side. Jacob began to grumble. "Didn't I tell you, don't dress according to your taste? Because of you, I was embarrassed in front of my parents." "What? Why can't I even choose my own clothes? When we get married, you are not going to tell me to wear clothes only from your dad's brand, are you?" Overcome with anger at father-in-law's attitude and Jacob's lack of support, my tone became harsh. Then, as if echoing my sentiments, Jacob started to get emotional too. "Yes, that's right. If you dress in his clothes, you'll shine. Please, just listen to me for once. Because of you doing whatever you want, even our marriage is in danger." "Then let's call off the marriage," I sharply retorted to his words. Jacob froze in his tracks, surprised by my firm response. With a tense face, he stuttered, "You're joking, right?" To which I replied, "I'm serious." Just like that, all his previous confidence evaporated, and he started to repeatedly apologize, begging, please, anything but calling off the wedding. Seeing his plea made me wonder if I had been a bit too harsh. So for now, I decided to observe the situation a little longer. We arranged to revisit the marriage greeting a week later, and if it didn't go well, the father-in-law threatened to break off the engagement. My thoughts aligned with his. "Hey, what about this outfit for a meeting with my parents?" Jacob seemed quite affected by the initial blow from the first meeting. His main concern seemed to be not upsetting his father. Clearly, his father's opinion was more significant than our impending marriage. That's why he was able to confidently suggest the same brand of clothing his father wears. "I'll choose what I wear. If you're going to interfere, let's break up right here and now." Seeing his behavior, my desire to marry him was slowly fading. So, as a secret weapon, I decided to call my dad. I told him everything that had happened. Fast forward to the day of the second marriage meeting. Jacob seemed nervous from the morning. As for me, I was calm. However, one difference was my outfit. The clothing I was wearing was all made in Italy, something I had requested from my dad. He runs a brand overseas and also sells it in the U.S. Sensing the situation was not good, my dad had someone from his American branch deliver the clothes. Since Jacob was at work when it arrived, he had no idea about it. Looking at my new coat, he had a puzzled expression, but didn't say anything due to the lack of time before our scheduled meeting. On the way to his parents' house, he pleaded with me, "Please, let's just make this meeting successful, okay? You want to marry me, don't you?" The look on his face implied that I should feel honored to have the opportunity to marry him. But inside, I wasn't excited about getting married anymore. The distrust had grown too much because of everything that had happened. I hid this from him by putting on a false smile. "I'll do my best." When we arrived at his parents' house, his father came to greet us this time. Apparently, my mother-in-law was out. As soon as we stepped into the house, my father-in-law started speaking. Hey, Jacob, what's the meaning of this? Didn't you promise to dress her in my brand?" His pride in his brand was much greater than I'd imagined. He once told me that even a pair of socks from his brand cost more than $200. "I'm sorry, Dad." Jessica insisted on choosing her outfit. Then my father-in-law let out a sigh and said, Jessica, could you please not destroy our family brand image? I mean, wearing such a cheap-looking coat." He examined my new coat closely as he spoke. "That's a knockoff, isn't it? At first glance, it looks like a Louis Vuitton, but it's not." He took out his phone and started searching for something. I guess he was probably checking the price. "I found it. There's a knockoff that looks just like your coat, and it's cheap too. Even if you don't wear our brand, there must be something a little better than that." My father-in-law began ruthlessly picking apart my appearance. His behavior was outrageous, and it was clear that this was no longer about a meet and greet for our marriage. Jacob remained tense in front of his father and did nothing to defend me. "Well, sit down and get that $60 coat off. You look poor," he smirked as he spoke. Apparently, there was a similar product to my coat priced at $60. In reality, it's missing 3 zeros. At this point, I'd reached the end of my patience. "I'm sorry, may I borrow a hanger?" I tried to reach for a hanger nearby. Then my father-in-law said, "For a cheap coat like that, a hanger is too good. There's a basket over there, use that. Jacob, get it for her." He then ordered Jacob to hand me a laundry basket. He was behaving just like his father's puppet. He wouldn't say anything even though we made eye contact. However, he froze when he saw the label peeking out from my coat, which I had reluctantly placed in the basket. "Dad, this coat's label. It says Prada." "What? What?" Both of them looked shocked. My future father-in-law, who had cavalierly labeled my coat as cheap, changed his expression as soon as he saw the tag. "Oh, Jessica, why didn't you tell us earlier? You're wearing something quite impressive," father-in-law said, trying to force a smile on his face. I gave him a cold stare back, and then I spoke. "About that marriage thing, let's call it off, please." They both looked surprised. "What do you mean, Jessica?" "It's only natural. Even if he's your own father, if you can't stand up for your future wife when she's being bullied, I wouldn't want to welcome you as my husband." But this is what?" When I asked back, he looked down and stayed silent, not knowing what to say. "Also, father-in-law, this coat is from a brand my father runs. And when I said Prada, this is a collaboration piece with Prada, and my father led the project. There are only 5 of these made in the world, and it costs $60,000. $60,000! Father-in-law reacted as if he had been struck by lightning. I later learned that the most expensive coat from father-in-law's brand costs around $12,000. Although that's quite high-end in general, it's not even close to mine. So big brand CEOs judge people by their appearance, huh? Father-in-law was at a loss for words. To the 2 of them, I continued. And Jacob, don't you think you were getting a little too full of yourself just because you're the son of a CEO? Sure, you look good, and you wear nice things, but what's inside doesn't match up. What? What are you saying? Jacob tried to argue back, but from my perspective, him getting angry was ridiculous. So you can justify it. You left me alone to take all the bullying and even pressured me to succeed the second time around. How would you feel if our roles were reversed? Well, that's... I don't want to be hurt any more than I already have, just so you can save your pride, I said to him sternly. At that, he became quite subdued and just said, I'm sorry. Then, as Jacob turned to my father-in-law, he said, Of course, I'll approve the marriage. I was wrong. Please, calm down. Still under the misconception that he held the upper hand, I was thoroughly disgusted by his behavior. I sighed deeply, which caused my father-in-law to jolt in surprise. He looked at me nervously. Do you know the ultra-luxurious Italian brand Ruby? Ah, of course. They're one of the top brands worldwide. I know the CEO. My coat is from Ruby. It's a collaboration with Prada. I see. Well, the point isn't that. It's that I'm the daughter of the CEO. What? You're joking. Both of them stared at me wide-eyed. They opened and closed their mouths as if trying to speak, but no words came out. I could tell they were struggling. I wanted to tell you formally when we announced our engagement, but that didn't seem appropriate given the circumstances. So I've been disrespecting the daughter of a more prestigious brand this whole time. It seems so, Dad. Jacob, quit messing around. How did you not know this beforehand? Thanks to you, we've made fools of ourselves. Feeling cornered, my father-in-law began to blame his son. While it might have seemed like he was just shifting blame, it was apparently a serious issue for the two of them. I didn't know, okay? All I was told was that she was just a regular ground staff. My boyfriend seemed quite afraid of his father. His voice shook, and he appeared terrified. Then my father-in-law suddenly changed his attitude towards me. Ah, I'm so sorry about my son. Now let me make some tea for you, father-in-law said with a forced smile that I found incredibly repulsive. Do you always act like this, father-in-law? Judging people by their appearance and flipping your attitude when you find out their high status? Can't you judge people by anything more than their looks? What? What did you say? By this point, I'd completely given up on the idea of marrying, so I decided to say everything that was on my mind, which made my tone quite firm. When I told my father about what happened, he mentioned that he's considering acquiring your company. What? He's going to buy out my company. Yes, he said that someone who can only judge people by their fashion brand isn't fit to be the president of a major brand. Fashion brands aren't there to flaunt your status to others. Therefore, the wearer should enjoy. A sheen of sweat was visible on my father-in-law's face. He seemed to be beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. He might be flaunting his status as the president of a major brand now, but being acquired would be a different story. Dad, if we're acquired now, we're screwed, right? We don't have the funds to resist, do we? Jacob asked his father with a voice full of disappointment. It seemed he had some knowledge of the company's financial situation. As I found out later, my father-in-law's company was barely managing to stay profitable, and their situation was always precarious. One significant bump, and they could easily plummet into the red. That bump seemed to have come in the form of an acquisition. My father always follows through when he says he will, and he raised me to do the same. So, as I've already said, I won't be married. Jessica, I'm sorry, Jacob said with tears in his eyes. I barely gave him a glance. I'd never thought that the man I once thought was cool could make such a pathetic face. And my father-in-law, Jessica, I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider the acquisition?" He begged. It's not like I had the final say, but my father-in-law was groveling to me who he had been looking down on just moments ago. His misplaced pride disgusted me, and I simply said, "That's up to my father." When all hope was lost, my father-in-law turned pale and fell to his knees. Ignoring the two despairing men, I left my father-in-law's house. After that day, I lost all contact with Jacob. When I reported back to my father, he informed me that the acquisition was already underway. My father has always been a gentle and kind man who treats everyone equally. But when my father, always a calm man, found out that his little girl had been hurt, he became a different person. Apparently, he had always had his eye on the acquisition of my ex-father-in-law's company, just waiting for the right time. Yet the moment he learned that the man who looked down on me for being poor was the CEO of the company he was considering acquiring, his decision was made. All doubt had vanished. He said, in the acquisition, my father promised to secure the conditions of all employees except for the CEO. This meant that my ex-father-in-law's fate was entirely in my father's hands. As for what happened to those two afterward, I have no idea. However, I felt a sense of relief when I saw the breaking news on the TV, reporting that Ruby Corp, a big American fashion brand, had acquired a leading fashion brand. The news was interviewing my ex-father-in-law. During the acquisition, he looked utterly worn out, the spark gone from his eyes. My ex-father-in-law and ex-boyfriend, who both prioritized status above all else in marriage, likely unable to appreciate a person's inner value. I strongly believe that a CEO should be like my father, someone who doesn't judge solely by appearances, but carefully evaluates the personality. I learned a deep lesson this time around, one that applies not only to branded goods, but to all things in life.